Alright, ladies and gentlemen, where I need you to go right now is in your study guide, page 44, and we're in part 3 now. What do I mean about the importance of keeping words or concepts in context? So this is what we're going to look at right now, and the word context is very important as part of clarity. So I'm now going to go to the PowerPoint and go over the concept of context. In terms of what I mean by the importance of context, first of all, context is the words and sentences that surround a word or concept that helps determine meaning. Now again, I know I'm not really 100% clear here yet, but I will give you additional information, additional context. And do people understand what you are talking about based upon what they already know? Do people understand what you are talking about based upon what they already know? As I said before, when we get new information, we connect it to something we already have some familiarity with, something we've experienced. If there is no point of reference, if somebody gives us a piece of information and we have nothing to compare it to, that's when confusion comes in. So, context, the words and sentences that surround a word or concept that help determine the meaning. And the second aspect is, do people understand what you are talking about based upon what they already know? And finally, the importance of context is it helps with clarity. It helps people better understand the concepts, particularly if concepts are very difficult or complex. So, the words or sentences that surround a word or concept that help determine meaning. Do people understand what you are talking about based upon what they already know? And it helps with clarity. So let me explain this to you by giving you an example, because I know right this second this is probably not 100% understandable. Don't worry about writing anything down. If I said Crater Lake in Oregon is very deep, you might say, well, what is very deep? Because what's deep to one person may not be deep to another. If there's a swimming pool and it's 6 feet deep, and a person who is under, like 5'6", like I am, and let's say I couldn't swim, a 6-foot pool would be very deep because I couldn't swim, I couldn't get my feet down to the bottom and keep my head above water, so that would be very deep to me. On the other hand, a high diver who might be diving from 30, 40, maybe 100 feet, a 6-foot deep pool may be very shallow because it may not be enough water to stop him or her before they hit the ground or hit the bottom of the pool and hurt themselves. So what do I mean by very deep? This is where I need context, additional information, additional facts. So what is deep? Well, Crater Lake in Oregon is 1,949 feet. Well, that's a number. And to a lot of people, it doesn't really mean anything. It just is a number, and I don't know necessarily how you relate to that. So how deep is 1,949 feet? Well, first of all, the Empire State Building in New York City is 1,250 feet tall with 102 floors. So if you put the Empire State Building at the bottom of Crater Lake, at the very top, at the observation platform or whatever, it would still be underwater. Now, the Empire State Building is 102 floors. It would take another 36 floors on top of the Empire State Building to reach the surface of the lake. Now you're getting kind of an idea of what I mean by Crater Lake being very deep. It is deeper than the Empire State Building is tall. That's what I mean by context. And this is where I need to put in some extra facts, like Empire State Building is 102 floors high. It would take another 36 floors to have it reach the surface. I could even show you, here's a picture of Crater Lake in Oregon. Now, beautiful lake, but you really can't tell how deep that is. Now, if I have a picture here of the Empire State Building, 1,250 feet tall. Way up there is kind of the equivalent of where the surface of Crater Lake would be, 1,949 feet. A lot of space in between, which means if the monkey King Kong in the famous movie were standing on top of the Empire State Building, unless that poor monkey knows how to hold his breath or has some scuba equipment, standing up there, he'd better know how to hold his breath because he's still underwater. That's how deep Crater Lake is. And that's what I mean by context. The additional facts, trying to find things that people know or can relate to, such as the height of the Empire State Building. In addition, and please bear with me, I know I'm kind of going off camera here. At the top of page 45, it says, knowledge without understanding is. And the answer to that is, excuse me, knowledge without understanding is worthless. Just because you give somebody a lot of information doesn't necessarily mean that they understand it. I don't know if you've ever had this experience. You've listened to a lecture, the teacher has been speaking, you've been listening, you've been taking a lot of notes, and as a result, you have a lot of information, but do you necessarily understand what the teacher said? It's kind of like if I were to go back to, let me go back to a different slide here. When I was talking about the difference between oral and written language, I said less formal, more words and redundancy, connects with what the audience already understands. You can write this down and you can memorize it, but it doesn't necessarily mean you understand still what I mean by the difference between written and oral language. So what I need is a better example to try to reinforce this, kind of like what I did with Crater Lake, where I tried to relate the depth of Crater Lake to the height of the Empire State Building. Now, let me, again, pause here. I'll end this part. This is part 3. And I'll then go on to the next section. So, this is the end of part 3. And we're coming up on part 4.